then we will start. Yeah,
It's
Now it's
started.
good. Thanks, Nandini.
Start
Let me
over.
put it on record. If not for Nandini reminding me on chat, this session would have got unrecorded, like many other sessions that I take for the last few years, because I always forget that we have to record the session, and simply because that's not in my frame of things. So let me reiterate once again why we are doing this session, especially for a non-tech background and people who are not very familiar with the tech, get some familiarity with whatever emerging tech that is happening out, because this is a very pervasive phenomena, in all geographies, all cultures, everywhere. Okay? And within business school settings also, the curriculums are being revised to, include a lot of tech and other things. Secondly, let me put a disclaimer once again on record that I'm not a tech person. I'm a consultant. I can understand some strategy, some bits of management, some bits of tech. But what I'm going to give you in this session is some tech and some articulation and paraphrasing of what those tech means. And definitely people in those industries or those who have wider interest would explore more and, initiate more out of this session research on those topics, so that, you can drive the interviews in that direction if you feel so. Yesterday we started with the policies and went to the framework. Today we are going to start with the framework and go back to the policy. There's a whiteboard shared right now. I will stop sharing the whiteboard in some time, because it takes away my screen. But this is what Mohan amongst. Okay, I will give another chance to everyone. Can anyone tell except Mohan tell me what is this which graph which is visible, or the chart which is visible on the whiteboard? There's one guy who guessed it right. And that time we had 38 participants. Now we have 90 participants. And Nandini.
Some tape I have seen this in some book cover. I have seen it some in book cover. Like there is a name of the book. I have seen it somewhere for sure.
Okay, book cover. So without wasting a lot of time, this is Gartner Hype Cycle. It's a very important, tool that a lot of CIOs and other people use to understand technology. Even academics, even consultants would refer to Gartner Hype Cycles. People who come from an IT background, especially, IT business side of IT and management side of IT, would have definitely encountered some sort of Gartner Hype Cycle at some point in their, career assignments or projects. If you see this cycle, has two axes, like all 2D graphs you have, and on the x-axis this is time, and the y-axis it says visibility. I copied this graph from Google. I would say expectation or visibility. You can have both on the y-axis. Either you can say it's visibility or you can say it's expectation. Now, if you see, I don't know how to annotate on this this piece of whiteboard, but if you start seeing, this graph moves up as time progresses and reaches a peak, which is a maxima, which is a maxima, right? A local maxima, as you may call it. Then it goes down and reaches kind of a local minima, and then it plateaus, right? I hope you guys are understanding these terms. They're not very complicated terms, right? It reaches a peak, then it reaches a trough, then it reaches a plateau, right? Now, what happens and why I'm telling you this is because for every technology that you can think of, it goes through a Gartner hype cycle, which means when the technology is out, when it's demonstrated either through a public demonstration or some research lab has demonstrated it, there's a hype that gets created, and you are seeing a rising curve. For example, Neuralinks. Now, it's a technology which is about nanobots in your brains. That's how I understand it. Elon Musk's startup. Metaverse, of course. Metaverse is kind of right now in the technology trigger. Since Metaverse is in our coterie of topics that we're going to cover today. So again, Metaverse, Neuralinks, these are technologies which are out there, which are yet, just demonstrated. For example, Neuralinks has been demonstrated just on a sheep, if I remember rightly. What Musk did was, demonstrate that within sheep, they inserted those nanobots and it was working. So it's still in that technology trigger to a peak phase where there's a lot of use cases which will come in, a lot of news articles will start coming in, a lot of applications, a lot of people, a lot of forums will start talking about it, and you will see a hype around that technology, and that will reach some sort of peak at some point in time where people will say this is it, this is the disruptive moment, this technology is going to change everything, falana falana falana, and it will go on. But after that peak, every technology hits starts going down in terms of the hype or expectation. Where will I put AIML? Well, it's preempting a lot of what I intend to cover in subsequently in this session. So let's not preempt a lot of it. I will definitely place AIML in this hype cycle and all the technologies that I intend to cover today, right? Once you hit that peak, you start going down, where you start realizing, okay, this technology has limitations, this technology has risk, this technology has certain constraints, and and there is a trough of disillusionment that kicks in. Maybe this technology is not what it was supposed to be. This maybe we hyped it too much, and it's not going to yield a lot of things. Then once that trough of disillusionment is hit, there are there's a segment where you start seeing a rise in expectation again, and what happens is people start figuring out the right use cases where putting the technology will actually give you higher returns. It's feasible, there's infrastructure, there is enabling environments in place that you can ensure that technology is going to work, and you start seeing tangible outcomes of that technology, and that's the scope of enlightenment. You have cracked where it's going to be used, and once that is achieved, there's a plateau of productivity, which means now we have perfected the technology, we know the use cases, we are implementing those technologies in those use cases, and we are now seeing it being used in real time. So every technology goes through a hype cycle, which means it's demonstrated, it's ideated, it reaches a peak, it goes to a trough of disillusionment, it goes after that trough to a real use case that comes in, and then it hits a plateau of productivity. This is an important hype cycle, important framework that you can keep in mind and start thinking about technologies that you encounter day in and day out, where it is placed. Now, everyone will have a different interpretation to it. Gartner will have a very different interpretation, but Gartner, being experts in this, might, it's a reliable way that, they have a lot of data to support where they're placing these technologies in their scheme of things, right? Uh, Typically, a technology cycle, what Gartner says, it's around a 10 to 15 years. So what it says, from the technology trigger to reach a plateau of productivity, it takes around 10 to 15 years, right? Uh, However, a lot of technologies have taken much longer because those ideas for those technologies, germinated long back. So this is one framework. Keep in mind, you might take a screenshot. You may not take a screenshot. What you need to know is this is called as a Gartner hype cycle. You can Google it. You will understand it. I find it useful to understand a lot of technology. I believe you guys will also find it. So that being said, we have covered the framework. Now, there are a lot of technologies out here, a lot of things happening in our own set of universe, in terms of space, in terms of energy, in terms of a lot of industry sectors. And once I was researching on what to put in the presentation or what to say to you guys. I realized that there's so much in technology that you can cover, and one session will never be enough for it. So what I thought was distill some of those technologies that you're encountering almost every day, either through newspapers, either through social media or other things, and those technologies that are cutting across industries, because that's what is going to be very important, right? And those are some of the technologies that I'm going to cover and give you some insights on, right? The first one of them is blockchain. I'm pretty sure, is there anyone who has not heard of blockchain? Absolutely no one. It's completely understandable. A lot of people are talking about cryptos, a lot of people are talking about Web3. You can note about Web3, which is a crypto enabled internet. Cryptocurrencies, a lot of people are doing crypto trading. You see advertisements in cricket matches of coin DCX and whatnot players, who are doing a lot of crypto trading and other things. What is a blockchain? That's a very hard technology, right? I personally feel it's not a very novel concept also. But what is blockchain? A blockchain is an open and a distributed ledger where every transaction that is happening is recorded and it's shared with everyone. So in a way, whatever happens on a blockchain, it gets recorded and it gets shared with everyone. So basically, you're building a trail, a digital trail of transactions happening. That's in simple words is blockchain, right? Now, all of this can lead to hundreds of use cases. One of them is contracts. Who signed the contract, what action was taken on that contract, every single step on that contract, smart contract, is enabled to a blockchain. So that's simply what blockchain is. If you have asked about blockchain, if you're asked about these things, this is how you can define it. So it's an open and a distributed ledger where every transaction is recorded in a verifiable and a permanent way, and there are certain encryption, decryption, hashes and all around it. I don't understand it a lot, but this is how it is in simple layman terms, and that's the intent of this session, to understand technology in the simple layman terms, right? Now, what possibly, since you see that every transaction is getting recorded in a blockchain and is visible to all, automatically you can think there are a lot of use cases built in around transparency in contracts, in banking, in cross-border transactions, where knowing each step what is happening is important. Money went from one person to second person to third person to fourth person. All of these trails are important. Wherever these trails are important, you will see a use case of blockchain. That is first part. This is the second part to this is what is the limitation, what is the potential risk to this technology. And one potential limitation and risk to this technology that I feel is something you should know is blockchain is hosted on an environment. It's hosted on certain servers, it's hosted on certain cloud, and what, who controls that cloud matters. I'm not sure if a country which is hostile to India and is probably one of the most economic country accused of economic dumping is controlling a lot of infrastructure that runs blockchain. Possibly they can alter a lot of it. They can do a lot of misdemeanors and misadventures to it to actually nullify what is the possible use case of a blockchain. That is building a trustable P2P network, right? So that's one possible limitation that you need to know. Second technology that we're talking now, where do you place blockchain in Gartner hype cycle? I would place, it's debatable. Gartner hype cycle is a debatable thing. My understanding of this topic and your understanding of someone who's a blockchain expert will differ in opinion. But typically, if I have to think very categorically, reading the use cases, understanding this technology, it's beyond the peak. It's hitting and going towards the trough of disillusionment. Blockchain was introduced. There's a lot of hype around it. People were writing endless things about it. There was talk of disruption, everything. Now people are realizing there are limitations to it. There are certain possible, the expectation was too high and that expectation is getting blurred at some point. So it's hitting the trough of disillusionment. But at some point, 2-3 years down the line, blockchain will be a reality, moving into that scope of enlightenment and a plateau of productivity, real use cases. Typically, I shared a news article on the Discord groups about IIT Kanpur issuing first blockchain, a private blockchain, educational degrees to the graduating batch, which graduated in 2020. I think it was a graduating batch of 2021. The convocation happened, I think, in 2022. So there are use cases that are coming in, real use cases that have some potential applications, but it's going to hit a trough of disillusionment and then reach the plateau of productivity and scope of enlightenment. Second technology, and I don't know whether we can call it technology or not, but it's definitely a technology that is very important. I am assuming 50% of you would have worked on it. 100% sure 100% of us use it. It's cloud, right? We are hosting this session on a Google Meet. It's over a cloud server. It's going to be stored on a cloud Google Drive, right? A lot of you use Office 365. Those in corporate world with work experience will have an Office 365 access, which is OneDrive, Excel, PowerPoint, again on a shared OneDrive or a cloud, right? So all of us understand cloud, OneDrive, Dropbox, Amazon Web Services. There are other clouds as well, right? Rackspace, Azure, Microsoft Azure is there, right? What is cloud? Simply, it's a place, it's a remote server. Understand? And now, again, as I said, I'm not a tech person, so forgive me if my words go here and there, but it's a remote service where you can actually keep your files, do a little processing, run your softwares, and do things, right? Right? You don't have to own that storage space. Basically, you own that storage space, but you don't have to keep it in your premise in a way, right? If I'm using a cloud server today, I have a cloud 5 TB storage. I don't need this on my laptop on which I'm hosting this session. I might just have 100 GB on my storage, which is a local storage that I have, but I have a 5 TB over a cloud, which is connected to an internet, and I can keep transferring file. I can do a lot of operations on it. Why is cloud important? Typically, if you encounter it, people in this technology will understand it even better. But if not, for people in non-tech backgrounds and others, cloud is scalable, highly scalable. If today I have to expand services, today if I'm catering to 1 million customers, tomorrow if I'm expecting a 10 million customers, it's a big billion day, and I'm expecting that a lot of people will log in, or it's an IRCTC Tatkal booking system where I'm expecting in pre-COVID days, a lot of people are going to log in. I need a lot of storage. I need a lot of processing capabilities. Cloud is scalable. I can scale it and I can pay for that scaling, right? On an on-premise server, you'll have to purchase those servers, create a data room, keep those servers, right? And then you have a max limit to those servers. You can't scale it because that scaling is a long time process. Again, you'll have to purchase, again, you have to configure again. Cloud, gives that utility to you that it's very fastly scalable. Secondly, it has reduced setup time, right? It has a reduced configuration time. If you some of you who are in IT would understand this very much. When you install a server, there's a lot of web servers, application servers, and other servers. There's a lot of configuration that goes on, right? Whereas in cloud, a lot of this is inbuilt, and it's a feature that they provide. And third, it's a subscription or a usage-based pricing that you can do with a cloud. If I'm using 100 terabytes, I'm going to pay for 100 terabytes. If I'm using 5 terabytes, I'm going to pay for a 5 terabytes. Whatever my demand is, whatever my requirement is, I'm going to pay for that. And it's a usage based. So there's a lot of cost implication or business implication to it. Right? A lot of cloud that you can think of is Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud, Microsoft Azure, right? A lot of there's some open source cloud servers as well, right? So this is what cloud is. Now, cloud typically, has 3-4 offerings that possibly you should know. One is SaaS. A lot of you would be working for SaaS firms. A lot of you, after your graduation from an MBA, would be working for a lot of SaaS firms, which is software as a service. My Office 365, Razorpays, MSME tools, Zoho Office Suite, which is there. These are software as a services. These are hosted on cloud. They're given to you as a software, with storage, software processing capabilities, and whatnot in that share. There's also a typical cloud which you can think of as infrastructure as a service, right? A Dropbox possibly would fall in that category. People of my generation, and I am 28 years old, so if some of you are in that generation, I believe some of you will be 21 also. Yes, 6 years younger than me. If you have used Dropbox at that time, Dropbox was kind of just a storage system. You can go drop in your files, keep it as a storage system. And not a lot of processing capabilities and lot of other things there. So that's simply infrastructure as a service. And so SaaS and infrastructure as a service is something you can keep in mind when you talk about cloud. Where does cloud fall in a Gartner hype cycle? I think it falls in plateau of productivity. We all know cloud is everywhere. It's omnipresent. All of us are using cloud. Today, when we go on purchase things, we know, we need a OneDrive, we need an iCloud, we need a Google Drive or something like that. When you go in offices, you're typically work from home now. वैसे भी on-prem services, on-prem servers and other things for security reasons, people keep it in banks and all. But a lot of things will be hosted on cloud, and you're giving a lot of digital remote access to these clouds. So it's a plateau of productivity. People have figured out its uses, and they're using it, and they're becoming more productive with it, and figuring it out how to achieve even more productivity with it. Technology number 3. did cloud have a trough of disillusionment? Every technology goes through a trough of disillusionment. It could be just the time period for which it happened would be lesser. I'm pretty sure cloud would have been a very faint idea or going through a trough of disillusionment when the storage and processing capabilities were not that high. A lot of what happens in technology, it happens because there's a hardware change also, which is accompanying in a very fast way. A lot of what AI and other things are happening because Nvidia and others could actually, develop a lot of graphic processing units, GPUs and other things that could, take on these technologies and faster processing in a much faster way, in a compact way. So it has gone to a trough of disillusionment, but hopefully time would be less. It's a proven technology. People would have realized, it has its uses. The third technology that we're going to talk about, which is going to cut across industries, is Internet of Things. I'm pretty sure every one of you have heard of it, right? Internet of Things is simply for oil and gas cloud. We can debate on that, Stuti. Possibly, in the next session that I'm going to take, which is with my mentees, and you are going to be in that session, we will obviously take this up, right? IoT. Uh, some of you would have seen Nest thermostats. Some of you would have been using, in a way, uh, a sort of IoT device in the form of Echo Dot, or an Amazon, the bigger Echo speaker, or a Google Home, or an Apple. I don't know what's the Apple one called, but they also have a smart speaker out here. Internet of Things is simply, you know, a term given to set of three things, if I may call it, or I should call it four things, right? Now imagine those four things and IoT in between. One of them is your sensors and actuators that are present in the physical world. For a Nest thermostat that can control your temperature in the house, right? If it is too hot, it's going to switch on the AC. If it's too cold, it's going to switch on some heater system, right? So there's a sensor to it that interacts with the physical world, right? It might be collecting humidity data, it might be collecting temperature data, it might be collecting some sort of data, right? Air quality or something like that, uh, particles in air or something like that, and it's feeding that into that machine, right? The second part to it is actually this data, which gets collected through these sensors and actuators, right? The third part to it is a software which is processing a lot of this data and, enabling that machine to take decisions on your behalf. Smart decision. If the temperature of the room has gone up, I have that machine has to switch on the AC, right? So that you automatically feel comfortable, right, with your body temperatures and with your body surroundings, right? And what Internet of Things does is all of it is connected through internet, which means a lot of this, whatever it is being collected, is being transferred to some device that you control on your smartphone or your laptop, or the processing centers where a lot of processing and decision making and logics and data learning is happening, right? This is Internet of Things. A lot of what smart speakers, smart refrigerators, smart TVs are IoT devices, right? It has use cases across industry. In plants, for predictive maintenance, you can know that this turbine is going to needs a maintenance schedule checkup in next 1 month. You have an IoT sensor out there that is collecting enough data around it, on multiple parameters, continuously feeding that data and giving you a warning that, we need to have a scheduled compulsory mandatory checkup of this turbine in next 1 month, and that you will have to keep a backup so that your operations are not disturbed, as well as, you have to ensure that this checkup is also scheduled. So a lot of use cases across industries can think of IoT. A lot of what IoT does, if you have to talk about it in a VAT or an interview, what it does is monitors your surrounding. It has sensors to monitor, evaluate your surroundings, right? Listen to your conversations, how you're speaking, understanding your dialects, understanding, other parameters inside your houses if you're using some smart home devices, or understanding surroundings in the factory setting if these are some factory IoT devices, whatever the parameters or attributes they are. Then it controls and optimizes, right? If I am optimizing it for an energy efficient use case, it's going to optimize my energy usage. It switch off the fans when I go away. It is sensing my presence out there. through some proximity sensors or through some infrared sensors or whatever other sensors, that can understand that I'm not present in the room. It switches off the light, switches off the fan, switches off the AC, it switches off the heater, or it switches off, other electric appliances which are not in use. So it's optimizing for an energy efficiency. And what's the future of it? Possibly it becomes even smarter. It becomes kind of a replica of what we are, how we are thinking. It takes a lot of steps in that direction. So that's how it is. So it can monitor, it can evaluate, it can control your surroundings, it can optimize for your certain use cases. That's the third technology. Where it falls in the hype cycle, I think it is beyond trough of disillusionment. People are figuring out use cases. It's yet to hit the plateau of productivity, but with a loss of privacy. We are going to take this also, Studijan, at the end of this session. Risk to all technologies that we are discussing. One big risk with all the technologies, even if you don't know about this technology, is privacy, right? A lot of these technologies thrive on data that they collect from users, and which automatically means they're going to breach some privacy boundaries. And we will have to decide for our own selves that how we make laws, regulation, and frameworks to ensure that they don't do it in a very invasive manner, and don't misuse that data if they're collecting, or what better way to collect and store data. Technology number 4, a favorite of everyone, too much talked about. A lot of you must be Marvel fans, a lot of you must be Jarvis fans, a lot of you must be Iron Man fans. Artificial intelligence. Ask anyone, probably they will have heard of AI. Now, not a crowd like illustrious crowd like this, which is sitting with a good CAT percentile and ZAT percentile, sitting for a B school interviews. You guys in the top fall in the top quartile or the top 5% of the country. You ask anyone, almost 75% of the crowd knows artificial intelligence. A very hyped technology, a lot of things said about it, lot of use cases, cuts across industries, right? What is artificial intelligence? I have a very good podcast episode on this. What I'm going to do is also share that podcast episode. It's one podcast episode. People from World Economic Forum to a lot of startup founders watched, listened actually. Podcast is about listening. And they particularly felt that, they got a good sense in that 1 hour what AI is. AI is, in nutshell, trying to mimic what we are as human, our intelligence, right? Making decisions, processing data, identifying patterns. That's what AI is. It's not a new technology. The concept of AI, forgive me for the dates, correct me, I think 1956 or something, there was a
Yes.
conference which happened in Dartmouth. Dartmouth is an Ivy League college in the United States. Also has a very famous business school called the Tuck School of Business. Some of my friends and batchmates and seniors have studied that place. They had a conference on mathematics and computing. They coined the term artificial intelligence. As far as I can remember the history, I think they had some programs that were playing certain games, mathematical games, and giving out certain answers based on the logics of ifs and else, right? And they said these are artificially intelligent systems. They're doing what humans can do based on the if and else syntax, right? Artificial intelligence is a broad term. Under it comes machine learning, under it comes deep learning, under it comes a lot of other things. Image recognition, natural language processing, voice recognition, video recognition, and others, right? What is important to understand when it comes to AI is that a lot of AI that we're seeing right now, I'm not a technology expert, a lot of things might be in the lab, a lot of things might be in very nascent stages at Google and big tech firms that are they have the best of the tech people from the MITs and Stanfords of the world doing an AI research. But a lot of AI that we are currently seeing in businesses and governments and others is an AI that is doing a lot of perception and pattern identification tasks with a minimum decision making. What it is doing? Perception, pattern identification tasks, some learning with some decision. That's what AI is doing. And AI is able to recognize an image. It's able to now transcribe what I'm speaking, which means I don't know if Google Meet has this. I think Teams and Zooms have this feature where if what I'm speaking gets transcribed in the language, right? It's able to identify images, people walking, videos, which is a possible use case you're seeing in an autonomous vehicle or a driverless car. You know, it has cameras and sensors. It's knowing, that a dog is crossing or a human is crossing. It has to stop and apply brakes, right? So AI has become good and fast at it, faster than humans. These are the use cases which AI has exceeded in a way human capabilities in a way. A lot of places where AI is supposed to go has not yet gone into is cognitive tasks. Tasks that require ambiguity, tasks that require emotions, tasks that require an innate understanding of a human being, things which we cannot say, things which we cannot express. A lot of this AI, they're still working how to understand that, right? Because at the base of it, it's pattern identification, right? So, uh, for example, I haven't tested a driverless cars myself, but people who drive would know that once you become good at driving, it becomes an involuntary process. It's an intuitive process. You know when to apply brakes. You don't actively think, oh man, the सामने आ रहा है मेरे को brake lagana, right? It's automatically happens that your hand and leg coordination becomes an involuntary muscular response to seeing obstacle, pressing a brakes, speeding up, pressing accelerator, right? So a lot of this intuition which we build through a lot of firing of neurons and build in our consciousness, possibly has not been able to build it, right? Which is why we see a lot of news articles where we see AI, autonomous vehicles or driverless cars hitting an obstacle in the dark because it couldn't figure out whether it was an obstacle or not, or sometimes stopping with a shadow, thinking that it's an actual obstacle. So these are things they're still working on, and things will improve on that front, right? One interesting trivia, and now just since we're talking, just a minute on taking a minute of your time, there's something called as the, if I don't know what it's called exactly, it's I think called as a Polanyi paradox or something like that. Polanyi, or some mathematician, that guy was Polanyi or something. Yeah, Google it. It's Polanyi paradox or something. What it says is that human beings know more than what we can articulate. Today, if I can see some of you on the screen, I can see Arvind, listening very attentively. If I ask Arvind, define the best. Arvind Menon is a South Indian surname. I think he must have eaten good South Indian food. Define idli to me in the most exhaustive manner. If I read this description, a person who has never seen an idli, Polanyi's paradox. Anik, thanks, Anik. Yes, that's Polanyi paradox. The person should be able to understand idli. Give me that kind of exhaustive, description of that. Possibly he might not be able to, because he can identify it's a round oval shape made out of rice and other things. It's white in color, or can add some other colors. But he might feel that taste. He might not be able to put it in the words. So the Polanyi's paradox is in a way, related to AI, because, and it's kind of one limitation of AI that we can talk it, because what happens is AI learns through a lot of data and things that we feed into the system, and the bigger limitation of human beings or lesser mortals like us is that we know a lot, we cannot articulate that. Despite us knowing a lot of things, we cannot put it in words or put it in a form of structure, syntax, and semantics for it to be fed in the machine. So that's a possible limitation that an AI will hit. A second limitation that AI can hit is, a lot of data that feeds into AI is already full of biases that human beings, that those who are functioning that, or those who are feeding that data would have. And those biases get fed in the machine. I forgot that robot or a AI bot which Microsoft actually launched. It was launched on Twitter. If someone remembers it, please tell me the name. It was a Microsoft bot. They tested it out. It was long back when Twitter was launched, and I think 2-3 years into Twitter. And that bot, immediately what it learned was slangs and abuses. Because that's what tay is the right word. Yes, tay. And it learned a lot of slangs and other things. So a lot of what data you feed in, it learns. So it means that a lot of biases it will pick up. It's not an unbiased system. That's one limitation, right? Why AI is important, we understood. But there's a lot of talk about AI replacing humans, right? People will ask you in business school interviews, because a lot of professors are studying AI. A lot of your courses are getting designed on AIs. lot of your casework, which is taught at IIMs, is designed on AI, at least including 10 to 15 cases in different courses, strategy, digital transformation, finance, and others, to have AI components to it, right? AI is not going to replace humans. Doesn't look like. Because at some point in time, and if you're posed this question, you're going to say, or at least think on this. This is what I believe in, and this is how I am articulating it. You can ponder, rephrase, paraphrase in better ways than that. That a lot of decision, cognitive, judgment making is a human capability. And AI might help me process a lot of data faster, give me certain outputs faster. But in the end, a lot of decisions that either I'm taking in a business context, either I'm taking in human personal context, either I'm taking in an educational career context, are going to be innate, driven by my gut, inexplicable feeling, what we call as Polanyi's paradox, and a lot of those judgments and other things are going to be driven by humans, which means managers of tomorrow will need to understand AI, will also need to understand the limitations of artificial intelligence, will also need to understand the building blocks of AI, what feeds into an AI, at the same time, also understand where AI stops and where a human being takes over, right? And this is where a manager of future, a manager of tomorrow is going to be very critical. That's an answer if faced in a business school setting, a business school interview setting, you're faced. Why, despite AI, management education, business education remains important, because a lot of it AI cannot do and possibly will not do. It won't understand emotions better than I can do or better than any human being can do, right? So that's AI, a very high technology. I think beyond trough of disillusionment, people know use cases, people know that it's working. Last two technologies in this set of session, uh, virtual reality, augmented reality, and the mixture of both, mixed reality, and loosely related to what someone talked in the beginning of the session, metaverse, which has become a very big hype right now. It's going through the first part of that curve, hype cycle. What is virtual reality? A simple definition of virtual reality, it's a virtual world created through a system or a device, a 360 degree view of, or a 3D view of the world that we live in. You wear an Oculus headset or a Google Cardboard, or I don't know, I think Microsoft has a HoloLens or a Google Daydreamer or a Samsung VR device or a Xiaomi VR device. You can put it on your eyes and you're transposed in a world where you're seeing a certain virtual representation of what is happening around in that setting, right? This is virtual reality. This is virtual reality. What are the business implications of virtual reality, or what are the possible implications of virtual realities? It cuts across industry, especially in COVID pandemics when we are remote working, especially in domains where it's a very high cost industry. Today, if I have to teach people in an engineering school, suppose some people and a new branch comes in which has some space component to it, and I have to teach them what an environment on Mars looks like. It's very costly for someone to be sent to Mars or say Moon. I don't know, Mars, people have not landed on Mars, or robots have landed on Moon, right? Now it will take a millions of hundreds of millions of dollars to send that person after a very extensive physical training to go on Moon and actually see it. Very hard, right? But what I can do is I can create that environment in a virtual reality, right? I can make you wear that headset and show you around what is happening, and that gives you a better visualization. So what it does is, in a high cost setting, it cuts across industries, Mohan. It cuts across industries. In education, there are use cases. In healthcare, there are use cases. In aviation, there are use cases. If I have to train factory workers, if I have to train airport staff on certain taxing of airports, when a flight lands, there are some people who come in and block the tires and take the plane, open certain things, refueling other things. These are trainings which can happen on site, but I can have a preliminary training in a virtual reality setting, right? So a lot of this, it cuts across industry. And why it cuts across industries, and this is how I'm articulating it. A lot of us are not very good at visualizing. And some of us, even when we are good at visualizing, some things are very complex to visualize, right? Or see in a 2D and understand very well, right? If I see a map or a layout on 2D or in a 2D image, I get some sense of how that flat or how that environment or how that house or how that settings looks like. But if I'm given into an immersive 3D, three-dimensional, 360-degree view, I can visualize and understand it better. So it augments my ability to see those things and to understand those things. So wherever there is a use case where complex things can be easily explained, a virtual reality will come in. So that's virtual reality. What is augmented reality? As the name suggests, augmented reality allows you to basically overlay a certain fictitious or certain non-existent thing on a real world. A lot of you can use AR on your phones. Basically what happens is, I don't know how many of you, I think Urban Ladder has it, or some other furniture firm has it. You can use your phone camera, point to your room, and actually place that sofa and realize, okay, how this is how it is looking. That sofa is not Pokemon. Pokemon is a very classic example. Pokemon Go.
Asian Paints has it.
Asian Paint, yes, very right. Asian Paints, lens card lenses, perfect examples. Thank you guys. Right, Asian Paints wall color app, or Urban Ladder furniture app, or the lens card, right, or Nika, or Pokemon Go, right. What happens is that thing doesn't exist out there, but in that, on your smartphone or your smart device, you can actually place it, augment it in the real world, right? You place it, overlay it, and visualize what is happening around. Now, this can also have a lot of use cases, hundreds of use cases in educational settings for better teaching, for better visualization, in driving. You're driving. A lot of you use Google Maps when you are in an unfamiliar territory, right? And within the Google Maps, often it happens the turn is very near. In the map, it shows the turn is quite far, and you're actually speeding in a speeding car. You actually miss that turn, and then it recalculates. Why not have an AR screen right in front of you, which is enabled with AR, which actually points out the next turn? If you see an arrow, this is the turn that you have to hit, right? And you can actually take that turn. So a lot of use cases coming for augmented reality. A mixture of augmented and virtual reality is mixed reality, and what we're talking of possibly a metaverse, a different universe that can exist, where you can actually be transposed in that universe wearing a VR headset, meet your friends or digital clone of your friends, or the digital identities of your friends. There's a concept, some of you who have worked in IT and technology and production plants and all, a term called as or smart cities and others, called as digital twin. Digital twin. That concept is about creating a total virtual representation of the system that is in place. Suppose I'm creating a smart city, right? And now a digital twin of that smart city would be a virtual representation over a set of systems, dashboards of the entire flow of that city, how the water is flowing, how the drainages are functioning, how the electricity is being supplied, how the gas is being supplied, how's the traffic flow happening, right? What it does is a lot of things in a smart city management or a city management, we might need to know certain scenarios. What happens if a flood comes in? What happens if a storm comes in? What happens if an earthquake comes in, right? A lot of these scenarios, of course, you can't do a real world simulation for that, right? You can't create a flood, open a dam, and let's see how the flood comes in, and then you'll. What you can do is you can create those scenarios in that digital twin, understand what parameters, what areas are being affected, create an action plan for that crisis, which when it happens, right? So a digital twin concept is what possibly, in a metaverse, you might see the digital clone of yourself, your friends in a social commerce setting, going in a shopping complex, taking a shop. It's going to be an API directed to that e-commerce website. You actually pick that up. It goes into your cart. You make a payment through an crypto, or what is being hyped a lot, and I read a lot about it on Twitter, NFTs, non-fungible tokens and other things, right? And you're making a payment. So it's a very imaginary word out there, but a lot of things were imaginary 20-30 years back are happening in reality right now. I won't be surprised. A lot of this turns out to be a reality, and drives a lot of business use cases for us. So that's mixed reality. Now, an important thing out here is a lot of these technologies that we talked about are being driven because there are certain other enabling environment changes that are happening. What are those changes? We are seeing superior hardwares, right? Superior processing chips, superior, nano chips which are very small in size but have much higher processing capability. I don't know how many of you have seen floppy drives. I have also not seen them. So, but I have seen some images on social media where people show that this was the storage size for a 256 MB device, right? It was a bulky device that used to store 256 MB, right? Today I have a phone or something like my smartwatch or something which can store multiple gigabytes, and it's very small in size, right? So we've seen a lot of advancements happening in hardware side. Second, and some of you might have guessed it or some of you might have not, there's a lot of advancement happening on the telecom side also, which are enabling. If 4G was not there, internet and a lot of use cases would not have been a reality. 5G, which will be even faster internet, is going 6G, 8G, and whatever all other Gs that come in are going to drive a much faster internet, right? And this is going to make immersive technologies such as AR, VR, high processing technologies, a reality in the real sense. Because healthcare use case of AR, VR, AI, what can it be? Simulating that operation for a very, very sophisticated cardiac surgery over a virtual system. Now that requires a lot of image processing, a lot of images, videos, and other things. Actively the motion in that artificial setting or an augmented reality setting should mimic your hand, right? There should be much lesser lag. And how it will be done? It will have a faster processing system and a faster internet enabling it. A lot of these enabling environments are actually driving it. Having said that, the last point for this session is a lot of these technologies have limitation and risks. And what are those risks? One of them is a security risk. Why a security risk? A lot of these technologies are being controlled by a few players. Those few players sit in few countries, right? They have immense leverage in terms of, driving out competition, breaching your privacy, dismantling national security and whatnot. So there's a security risk, cyber security, identity frauds, financial frauds, other sort of thefts, right? Second risk, privacy risk. A lot of these technologies thrive on collecting your data, right? Which means they're breaching certain boundaries. A lot of regulations are coming in advanced economies. A lot of regulations are bound to come in economies like us, which are emerging economies, right? The third thing is, sustainability. And someone I think pointed out in the chat, climate change. A lot of these technologies use a lot of power. They use a lot of energies to run those servers, right? They're going to drive a lot of climate change issues, right? Fourth, behavioral change. Now, this is an interesting point. I don't know how many of you have Netflix. I would be surprised if any one of you doesn't. अपना नहीं तो दोस्त का होगा. A lot of you watch Netflix. ये काली काली आके आ रहा है आजकल. I'm hearing good reviews about that TV series. There was a documentary last year. I forgot what it was called. Was about the addiction that social media and fake news are bringing into your system. It's manipulating you, right? And it was based on research done by Harvard Business School. Social dilemma. Social dilemma. It was done. It was based on a lot of research that was done by a Harvard Business School professor. Again, my bad memory. I remember Clayton Christensen's name, but I don't remember that professor from Harvard Business School. She had done a lot of research on this. The fourth risk for these technologies is that they're manipulating behavior. They're creating echo chambers. They're giving you selective information. They're inciting understanding your emotions. They're making you purchase things you don't need, hitting on sustainability. They're making you polarized in ideological fronts, making you believe in a reality in an echo chamber which might not exist. They're making you addictive to your screens, not realizing that's a word outside screens. That's the fourth risk. What's the fifth risk? And that's an important risk in terms of the business implications. There are costs to everything, right? And a lot of these technologies might look fancy, but for a business decision, it has to come into a certain cost structure where you actually get returns on these technologies, right? Unless and until it doesn't make a business sense to pursue it. If I'm investing more and I'm not getting those kind of return, even in a longer paradigm, right? It's a useless technologies for a business use case. And the fifth thing or sixth thing in terms of a socio-economic change, a lot of these technologies are going to be a critical challenge for human resources in terms of not just replacing jobs, which has happened over time and again. When computers came in, they replaced certain jobs, right? These technologies might replace a lot of banal or mundane jobs which are repetitive in nature, which an AI can do much faster, right? So the challenge would be, how do you tackle with those lost jobs? How do you tackle with retraining and reskilling of workforces, right? So this is a human resource challenge or a socio-economic challenge that will come. And the seventh one, which again a socio-economic and a social setting challenge, a lot of these technologies thrive on the data and are being trained by humans like us. A lot of biases, moral judgments, prejudices that we have are imbibed in those technologies and possibly will be demonstrated in the decisions taken by those technologies. If there's a black discrimination that happens in certain Western countries, it is very likelihood at a resume screening AI app would be doing so, because it's being trained on a certain data sets where it has seen the black candidates are being filtered out much faster, or a Latin American Hispanic candidates being filtered out much faster than say a certain white race. Or a similar analogy on caste can be built on in India, right? These are sensitive topics, cannot delve too much into it, but there's a lot of risk in terms of prejudices and biases that can come in. That is for the session today, guys. And now I'm open to taking questions. I think I stepped in longer than I was thinking I would have gone. One last thing, not in this list, but a lot of you would have worked on big data. If you have worked on big data, remain understanding of that big data. The only thing I can remember on top of me, if someone asks me what's big data, I tell them it's a three V's. That three V's I remember very fast. It's volume, velocity, and veracity. Volume is, it's a very high amount of data, large volumes of data, very high velocity data, Twitter feeds or something like that. It's refreshing very fast. And veracity, it's a very different type of data. I can see images, I can see videos, I can see GIFs, I can see audio, I can see text and other things. It's a lot of data, and all of this gets purged into a single stream or something like that. And you need different tools to process that data to come up with sentiment analysis and other things. So this is what big data is. A lot of you who have worked on big data would be required to know it. Final thing, all of these technologies cut across industries. Now, some of you come from edtech, some of you come from financial services, some of you will be coming from healthcare, some of you will be coming from oil and gas, some of you will be coming from pharma, some of you will be coming from manufacturing, some of you will be coming from heavy steel or something like that. A lot of these technology use cases in your industries have, just read on it and know. Don't talk in fancy terms, don't talk in jargon terms. Simply break down the technology. What's the objective it's achieving? What is it giving to the government? What is it giving to the business? What is giving to the society? And for your own structuring, think of where the technology is in the Gartner hype cycle, so that you can, if it's in a peak phase, a lot of things will be hyped up. You don't know. You're saying, I am keeping my fingers crossed. I'm reading more on it. I'm trying to understand, make sense of it. I will talk to experts on it. If it's in a trough of disillusionment, you're saying, no, maybe we are in a phase that we are thinking that technology is overhyped, but I do believe there are real use cases that will come in and start pitching, right? So think on those frameworks and think give your answers of that, whatever. I'm open to taking questions now, and we can have it. I ignored the chat for this session for a long time. If there is a good chat, Amazon removed the AI resume last year. Ashantam, I'm not. Which is better? Again, Aditi, these kind of questions are hard. Don't ask. Shows that session has been in a which technology is a better future? Both AR, VR, mixed reality as a better future. There will be both use cases of AR and VR. I'm no expert. I'm not no prophet, no expert, no soothsayer, or what they call. Yeah, there's a fancy word to it. Clairvoyant. I'm not that kind, that I can tell you what technology will take up. There are not many experts out here. Right? Guys are waiting for questions. Otherwise, it means the session was too good for people to not have questions, or it was too useless that everyone just dozed off. But it seems, I think, legal aspects of these technologies. What do you want me to answer? every technology would have to have some regulatory framework, and governments are proactively trying to figure out. For example, even on the crypto trading and other things, I'm pretty sure government was coming up with some draft paper. Similarly, government came up with a national AI summit. They came up with a Niti Aayog came up with a national AI thought paper of possible use cases that can drive Indian economy. So all governments will start thinking on this technologies, laws, especially on the risk and security, privacy, whatever risk I told you in the session. They're going to think on those aspects and draft certain frameworks and laws, not to deter those technologies, but to also not get them out of hand. Like that OTT wala was, sir, Industry 4.0 Industry 4.0 is there about automation, IoT, and other things. I was thinking I should cover it, but I felt it's an amalgamation of a lot of these technologies in an industry setting. So AI, IoT, cloud, data analytics, and a lot of these technologies merged to make uh, industries more efficient, more productive, and drive the next wave of transformation in industries. That's Industry 4.0 and very is Netflix. Sorry, this is a very long comment. Let me read it. If Netflix is addictive and harming humans, but is making brown make. We're not going to ask you it in a very straightforward manner like this. If Netflix is addictive and it's making business, right? Is it ethical? Is it not ethical? Possibly an ambivalent position. That's an ambivalent position. Yeah, they're making content. They're putting it in front of you. They're making it easily streamable and accessible, right? Ultimately, it's an individual's choice. So I don't think that a business is facing an ethical situation out there. Addictive in terms of it is giving you more recommendation. I think that's what Netflix USP is, right? If the people are not spending time on Netflix, doesn't make sense for Netflix to operate. So that's a USP.
One thing which I had read somewhere, it is like all the social media and stuff, they help, like they make vertical growth of knowledge, and rather than horizontal growth of knowledge, saying that like if I have a belief A, my feed is filled up with belief A stuffs, so it's like it's growing and making more bias towards that rather than getting the horizontal different.
That's what echo chamber is in a way. If you watch Social Dilemma, right? What it does is it creates an echo chamber. It understands, and that documentary also argued it manipulates your behavior by continuously feeding you with that. Are we going to what exactly? Instagram analytics and YouTube analytics. Sayantika, I don't know. These must be some digital marketing tools. Not an expert. If you are in digital marketing, you are expected to know this. Ask on Discord. Someone would be in digital marketing. If automation will replace human jobs, if feasible is it feasible in a huge population like India? Automation will take up a lot of jobs. It starts with taking up a lot of repetitive jobs. If you have to articulate it, a lot of repetitive jobs that don't require a lot of human judgment and human intuition and human cognitive capabilities and human judgment, right? Is it feasible? Yes, it will start taking up jobs in India also. What is an implication? The workforce has to be reskilled, and you will have, or it will also create a new set of jobs, which people will have to be transposed to. So a lot of this. The second thing is there's a fancy argument that goes in that AI and all in an idealistic future will take away all the jobs. All you have to do is sit at home, and possibly that's where what Thomas Piketty puts a concept, universal basic income. I keep you at home. I keep pay you for destroying your time, having a lot of things being done by AI, and since you're getting your social needs met, your other needs met through that universal basic income, you're not going to create a civil unrest. That's an argument I read it somewhere, and a fair argument. I think I would partially agree with that argument. If this is what it happens to be. Blockchain guy, this is a severe limitation. Crypto, you had a discussion on crypto, I think, sometime in the Discord forum. Not going to speak a lot on it because we have planned something on that as well, which is going to be an assessment for you guys. But yes, crypto, that crypto trading is a very debatable topic in terms of, It's an alternate currency which is out there. People are saying it has use cases because a lot of currencies, a lot of economies are mapped to certain ways of valuing their currencies, and which means a lot of other countries which have weaker currency are at disadvantage. Crypto will democratize everything and all. But underlying asset, no one knows. Who is controlling the infrastructure that is trading coin? No one knows. So a lot of these challenges are there with crypto. It's a domain which government is also trying to understand. A lot of people are trying to understand, to regulate it, to ensure that it's not going to harm the citizen. So tech is very helpful. We have often seen cases of tech and delay the health need. Yes, that's correct. That's correct. As I said, it's one of the risks that we said is security risk. Tech today is controlled by a few players, FANG as they call it, and that's a dangerous proposition because they can also do a lot of non-competitive and competitive practices. Farming activities are somewhat repetitive. Is AI going to replace it? If yes, will it be? Good question. In Indian context, maybe not. India being an agrarian economy, we might not be very willing to have a lot of farmers. But when this question was posed to who is this? Anand Mahindra, the chairman of Mahindra Group, was sitting in one forum and he was asked, what's the future for AI cars or the autonomous vehicles, driverless cars? And his response was, Indian roads are too tough to have a driverless cars. What I can think of, and this is Anand Mahindra saying, that the use case that I can think of is I'm going to make driverless tractors, less obstacles, much more simple terrain to operate in, and I can test out my technology and make sure things can happen in it. So a lot of AI and these technologies can do a lot of things in agriculture and farming. But given in an Indian setting, if I have to ask and answer that question, I would say India being a low income per capita country with farmers in a really dire shape in terms of making their ends meet, a lot of this technology will require investment and other things. So it's not not a thing which is in the foreseeable futures. But what we will see is multiple use cases keep on coming, and we will see how we can play out. There's a startup called as Moo Farms, uses some AI in dairy and other things. There are startups which are using drone technologies to navigate and understand cropping patterns and other things. There are startups who are collecting a lot of data in terms of sourcing, procurement, creating marketplace for those farms. The cattle farming, Moo Farm Animals. That's correct, Shandam. There is a startup which understands climate patterns, soil patterns, understand IoT. Basically, it's an IoT application. It has a lot of sensors in soil as well. Understands the moisture. Ensures that the irrigation happens when the moisture level is low. Fertilizer is being used in the right amount and other things because it's collecting a lot of data and parameters. So a lot of things already happening. A lot of startups in aggregated tech are trying out things. But having talked to a lot of experts in this domain, or people at least who work in this domain, what I realized, a lot of it is not financially feasible right now and viable right now. They're still in experimenting phase. So I would say they are beyond the peak of that hype. They're hitting trough of disillusionment where they're realizing it's not feasible, it's not viable, and slowly it will start again emerging in real use cases which are making business sense, farmer sense, government sense. Everything will start coming up. Cool. Thank you guys for the session. More than an hour. Glad that I hope this was useful, and some VAT or some PI you are going to encounter it. So don't it's a good session to have. Best of luck. I think the next session that I meet you is post budget. 1st February is the budget. I'm assuming it takes a day or two for me to read the budget and figure out important things, and then take a session 2-3 days after that for you to understand what are the key takeaways from the budget and how do you tackle budget questions. Simply, I think all of these things are being reinforced again and again, will be reinforced through mock PIs, through our Discord feedbacks, throughout these sessions. Is businesses, school interviews are simple interviews. What you need is clarity of thinking. What you need is a very strong purpose to why MBA. MBA should not appear as a pedestal to you or some other dream that you have. MBA should not appear as an end goal in itself. It should appear as a vehicle to achieve a certain larger objective that you have in life, and there should be an innate curiosity towards understanding business and management. A lot of what you speak should come from your heart, or at least be so good in theatrics that it appears that it is coming from your heart. A lot of it comes from practice. It should be conversational, not rehearsed. or well ratified or parroted, right? And a very big feedback: keep using simple language, keep using simpler words. Always break down things into the simplest forms that you can break it down to. When you're answering those questions, they appreciate it. They using a lot of jargon, using a lot of complexity shows a cluttering in your mind about those things, which means you've read, you're good at reading, you're good at encapsulating, you're good at feeding that thing in your brain, but you're not able to make a sense of it, right? A lot of things, when you're able to explain simply, it works wonders. So whatever you're doing, whatever you're rehearsing, whatever you're doing in mocks, and mocks is the place to make a lot of mistakes, because the mentors are going to point you out, and you're facing no consequence of that in a real in a way. You're going to get a feedback. Make sure you break down your answers, you ask them critical feedbacks, and every time once you've done the mock, go back, think on the feedback, on what you answered, rehearse them in your mind, play them out in your mind again, thinking, was it conversational, was it natural, was it coming from your heart, right? So all of this is very important. It's going to be reinforced again and again, and that's what I feel works wonders when it comes to your real interviews. That daily discussions, sessions like these, recorded sessions which are asynchronous content that is floated to you, VAT and other things. All of this reinforce clarity of thinking of why you should do an MBA, and it enforces and gives you confidence to speak in that platform, in that setting, in a conversational manner, without stuttering, without faltering, and without losing your confidence and streak. That's it. Good night. Have a great Sunday, whatever is left of it. You guys have a busy Monday and a week coming in. I hope it is productive, and best of luck.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.